First of all is the Central Library, our host location. And in the past, I haven't made a special note, but walking across the back, the guy that does the setup of the room and runs a lot of the equipment is Darren Willett. So Darren waved to everybody. Say thanks to Darren. He makes it kind of possible for you to actually have some place to sit besides the floor, which is always kind of nice. We do have some refreshments. We have regular and some decaf coffee, and there should be some juice up there, and some one of nature's most perfect foods is donuts. We have some of those. We'd appreciate it if you'd have a look at the donation tubs and consider that. It helps cover the cost of that kind of stuff, so we always appreciate that. Along in the back of the room, you can sign in, put your email address down if you'd like to be notified via email of all these events. We'll be glad to do that. If you've done that before and have not received an email heads up about these events, that means that what you wrote before bounced back. So sign up again and print very, very clearly. This is different from regular mail. You've got to be exactly correct. So if there's just one thing that's not quite right, it won't go through. So feel free to sign in to be on the listserv notification. The format for the events is each speaker is going to get 3 minutes to make their case about something about the Indiana legislature. It could be a specific bill, but I need to kind of know what that issue is fairly quickly, whether you oppose or support a particular bill or a resolution or something that the state legislators have an opportunity to be able to try to do something about. Then legislators will get, it has been 2 minutes, but we've got a couple folks that haven't been here. So we've got 2 legislators that will not be here today. So we might have a little fudge factor on that. But after your 3 minutes are getting close, I'll let you know you're getting close by holding this sign up. And if you're still going after that 30 seconds is up, I'll cut you off. I get to do the same thing with the legislators. They get a little bit of time each. And I got to cut them off, which is great fun. So I really enjoy doing that. So just please identify yourself, if you like, in just a couple words and your issue. The way we're going to go is back and forth from one side of the room to the other. We're going to look for new faces and brand new issues. If you want to talk about an issue that has already been spoken about, you won't be able to speak about that issue again. If we have time toward the end and there's enough time left, we can revisit issues. But until that happens, and it really hasn't happened much, we really haven't had extra time. If we do have extra time, then we'll revisit issues. Otherwise, we won't revisit issues. We will finish up right at 11:30. Some of the legislators have the ability to stay for a little extra time, and you might have a chance to do one-on-one with your particular issue directly to a legislator. These events are being taped to be shown on WNIN. And this particular event, the air dates will be March the 25th at 4 o'clock and the 27th at 8 o'clock, the 28th of March at 5 o'clock, and the 29th of March at 2 o'clock. So if you want to revisit this or you want to let other people know and that they can watch this event on WNIN on those particular times. Our next event is going to be, and the last of the season, is going to be April the 18th. Location is still going to be the same. So with that said, let me introduce the rest of our sponsors. Introduce the Central Library as one of the sponsors, but the other sponsors are Sustainable Communities Coalition, the Isaac Walton League of America, Valley Watch, the League of Women Voters, the Evansville Teachers Association, Evansville Council of Churches, United Neighborhoods Association, Teamsters Local 215, and Plumbers. Also the Central Labor Temple is our sponsors of this particular series of events, and so we really appreciate those folks. That kind of makes it possible for this to happen. With that said, we'll kind of move right into it, and so I think we'll start on this side of the room. So if somebody wants to speak to an issue, I see a lady up there in the pink, yes. And, somebody has the microphone. Microphone is coming to you. Please state your name and briefly your issue, and then you've got minutes to get into your issue.
My name is Margie Toms, and my issue is with the state legislators' vote against Jackie Wolarski's resolution or amendment being germane to a bill about not giving funding Planned Parenthood. Now, I know that a lot of Democrats say they're pro-life, but every one of them voted against her, and it was actually germane. Every one, and I think that Pat Bauer wanted this voted down. And I'm not sure if it's because the Democrats are in control of the federal government that he has so much control over life and family. But it seems like every life and family issue is voted down or not being able to be heard because of Pat Bauer. And I would, if you're pro-life, you're pro-life. And if you're not, then, just say it. But to me, our country is going downhill because we're not supporting the people that are least able to be hurt, and that is the babies. And pro-choice is you have a right to not go to bed with somebody if you don't want to have a baby. Once God blesses that union, then that is not our choice anymore. So I want to know why the Democrats absolutely will not vote against Pat Bauer, or why they will not vote for life.
Okay, response from the legislators. Representative Avery.
First of all, the vote was a procedural vote. You say that it was a germane amendment. It was not a germane amendment. Our attorney ruled that it was not, and our speaker ruled that it was not germane to the subject matter. And that was the vote of whether it was germane or not. On the merits of the amendment to start with, Indiana doesn't pay for abortions. Indiana does not provide Medicaid abortions. And so it was a useless amendment also. And it was an amendment to cut off all funding for Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood does a lot of wonderful things. They provide family planning for people that need family planning, for people. They provide certain health services, reproductive planning, as I said. They provide a prenatal care, a lot of things that allow babies to be born healthy and allows a woman an option to abortion. I think the person should not be put in a position where they have to get an abortion because the baby's unhealthy and because they can't afford the prenatal care. And that's what Planned Parenthood does that's good. As I said, Indiana doesn't pay for abortion, so the abortion issue is irrelevant to the subject matter. And not only that, the amendment was not germane, and it was ruled to be not germane, and so we supported the germaneness issue, and that was the vote.
Okay, thank you. Other responses? Representative Crouch.
Well, just a kind of a comment on the process up there. Whatever party is in control decides what's germane and what's not germane. And regardless of whether it's the Republicans in control or the Democrats in control, whoever has the votes decides what happens. In fact, there's a Representative Bill Crawford, who is the chairman of the Ways and Means. And oftentimes when Republicans who are in the minority in the House have a complaint about the procedure and the fact that something may not be germane or it may be not relevant, he'll go to the microphone and he'll say, I believe in the golden rule, whoever has the gold rules. And that's what happens up in the General Assembly, regardless of what party is in control. So I just want to comment and point that out.
Responses from legislators? Representative Rican.
Thank you. Was this actually then the bill was withdrawn?
No.
Was this there was another one where the bill then was withdrawn because it was put on another one too? There was another bill where the actual bill was withdrawn, and it was a bill that was very important. But again, the germaneness issue is one that is controlled by the speaker, and I do back up the decision that he had. I think we have to be very careful about how we approach Planned Parenthood and what shall I say, misconstrue the good efforts that they actually perform in the communities. And I have felt like there are sometimes intentional misunderstandings about their role, and I would not ever want to be in a position where we would take away that funding. My father was an OBGYN and gave up many, many hours to volunteer here locally years ago to support women in good health, and I commend him and their efforts.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to a new issue, and this side of the room. See, right over here, we'll start over here.
Mike Minke, I want to just comment on a bill that recently went through both houses. It was the synthetic natural gas bill that's going to use one of our most abundant resources here in the area to produce a natural gas that will be sent around the state of Indiana. And keep in mind, every dollar that we spend now on natural gas leaves our state. And then to speak on some other issues, I know that some of the environmentalists have been at several of these town meetings leading up this vote.
You might want to stay with one issue.
Well, but just the comment that they were vital on this issue. We wouldn't even be talking about this plant if it hadn't been for the environmentalists. This bill would not be here if it wouldn't been for the environmentalists. They've totally been active in the support of cleaner air, and this is going to do that. It's going to take coal, produce a clean natural gas, and it's like Representative Crouch said. It's time we become energy independent. This bill did that. It's leading the way to that. We have to stop trading blood for oil, or spending billions of our dollars finding out where our next barrel of oil is going to come from. So with that, I just want to comment to the legislators that we appreciate your hard work on that.
Okay, thank you. Responses from the legislators. Representative Crouch first.
Thank you. And, it was an easy vote for me, simply for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's not where we really would like to be as a nation. I mean, where we really would like to be is we'd like to have more renewable, more alternative energy, and have it affordable where people can have it. And I think that's the direction we need to continue to move in. But what this particular plant does is that it produces natural gas. It takes coal and combusts it to produce natural gas. And the emissions are 99.5% less than a coal-burning plant that we have now. In addition, 90% of the carbon will be captured. It'll require us to be less dependent on foreign countries for our natural gas. And so while it's not the end where we should be, it's a good first step. And as a country and as a state, in my opinion, we need to start taking those steps to where we can be energy self-sufficient and have a cleaner environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Rican.
I would add to that a couple of things about the financing and the ratepayer, because I think there are three things that were really important about this legislation, probably in deference to the Edwardsport plant, which is also a gasification plant, and that is that the ratepayer is not paying for any of the construction. The financing is totally private. This legislation enabled them to get a federal grant, which is a federal loan, that they will be paying back. And I think that's important to note, is that we're not paying for this plant. As well, there will be, over a period of time, a guaranteed, there's going to be a price in there, a base price, and this will not be on the backs of the ratepayer. It's going to be competitive, but it's going to be, over the long run, something that we'll be able to live with instead of this volatility of the natural gas. The other thing, which I think is kind of interesting, and I know this isn't definite about the plant, but one of the things they want to do with the carbon is to pipe it down to Mississippi, and they're going to, you didn't mention that, did you? They're going to try to pipe it down to Mississippi, and they'll be using it to inject into wells and to bring up oil, which is very, very interesting. There's a lot of innovative science that's going into this plant, and the risk is minimal to actually nothing to us, and very calculated to the people that are investing in it. I think it's a transition to the more green technology that we're all interested in.
Thank you. Representative Avery.
Well, this is one that we disagree on as a delegation somewhat. I certainly find the goals laudable, that that we use coal in such a way that it's cleaner, and that is the goal. But that I don't think is the fact. I don't believe those to be the facts, and also the taxpayer is involved in this. They're using the good name of the state of Indiana in order to get a loan from the federal government. It's a $2.3 billion plant, and all the natural gas that they produce will be required to be purchased by the state of Indiana. They're not selling in the market. The state of Indiana is going to be required to buy that natural gas, and then the state of Indiana, through the our utility department, will then coerce the utilities into buying it, and guess what? Your utility bills will go up as a result of that, because you'll have to pay for the construction of that plant through your higher utility bills. It could be that Vectren won't buy a bit of it. It could be that it'll all be sold elsewhere. But when there are a lot of people that are assuming, based on what this international corporation says they're going to do, they're assuming that will happen. But these are all just goals of this organization that's going to borrow to purchase or to build this power plant. There's this synthetic fuels plant in Rockport, Indiana, and I'm very hopeful that it works. I hope. Well, it might not even happen, of course, but this is their goal. The state of Indiana is backing it up, but I hope that it works. If it does, well, we'll get cleaner natural gas. But if it doesn't work, the state of Indiana is going to be stuck with, because we're backing up this purchase. We're buying all this synthetic fuel, and we'll be stuck with perhaps a nightmare in the long run. And so I probably could have supported, if they'd had a contract with the utilities, I probably could have supported this, but they didn't. They had a contract with the state of Indiana to buy all of their natural gas, and we have to back it up, and we have to buy it, and then we'll pass that on to the utility to the utility user, and that's the concern that I had.
Thank you, Senator Becker.
As a result of the last meeting that we had here, and there were people here that spoke in opposition to Senate Bill 423. So I thought, well, I better look at that and get more information before I cast my vote. And so one of the entities that I rely on is the Consumer Counselor's Office, because they are charged specifically under legislation which representing ratepayers in opposition or to counter the utilities. And so I contacted the Consumer Counselor's Office at the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. And I think what his point was that nothing will happen with this plant unless they can guarantee savings to the ratepayers, to the people of Indiana. It won't even get off the ground. They have to guarantee savings in order to do this. And I guess I just think with that in there, he didn't really feel as though ratepayers would lose in this particular process and project. And it may not happen, but we have to do something. Everybody here has been paying Vectren's utility bills for several months now. They're the highest. They are the highest in the state right now. They used to be, years ago, they used to be the lowest in the state. And, they probably made some bad decisions when they bought gas last summer. But part of it is the reliance that they have right now on foreign oil. And so I think we do have to be innovative, and hopefully this plant will provide that. But ratepayers are guaranteed savings or this project doesn't go forward.
Thank you. That's up for that issue. We'll move to another issue, and we're on this side of the room. Saw a hand way in the back. Microphone is coming back to you. When it gets there, please state your name and briefly your issue, and then you can get into your issue.
Bill Kitchens. The issue I want to talk about is what the gasification here you talked about.
We just talked about that issue, so we need a brand new issue. Thank you. We'll pick somebody else from this side. See a hand right here. Lady?
Lady.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Rose Young. Oh, Estelle, I apologize. I'm here representing the Early Childhood Development Coalition, and I'm here to say thank you for the delegation's support of Senate Concurrent Resolution 10, which asks for the study of funding for early childhood education. Our entire delegation has been very supportive, and I do want to thank Senator Becker and Senator Dyke for co-sponsoring that legislation on the Senate side, and Representative Crouch as a co-sponsor on the House side. As some of you may know, the Early Childhood Development Coalition is an organization of over 100 partners, and we are all about bringing research-based opportunities to families, children, and teachers. And remarkably, 85% of a child's brain development occurs by the age of 5, yet 95% of public investment occurs after that age. Even more remarkable is that Indiana is one of only 12 states that provides no investment in early childhood education funding. So this piece of legislation is really a wonderful first step for moving us forward. So again, on behalf of the ECDC Coalition, thank you very much. I also have a 2009 report to the community, which I would like to present to you so that you have updated information. And I've also provided copies of the report on the table as you enter, so I hope the audience will take an opportunity to pick it up and learn more about what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Responses from legislators? Representative Crouch is first again.
Well, I wasn't here last time. Thank you, Rosie. And, you know, it strikes me, and it struck me when I went to the legislature, that we are so progressive here, and we are a leader in so many issues. We're the ones that cause change in the state in so many areas, and this is an example, because when this group met with the legislators back this past summer, one of the things we said is, well, you know, what about your counterparts throughout the state? You know, you've got to get them involved if you're going to get other legislators on board. And one of the things they said is, well, their counterparts, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rosie, your counterparts in other parts of the state aren't as far along on this issue as you all are. Is that not correct?
We're trying to pull that network together now.
And so this is once again an example of leadership being demonstrated by our part of the state that will end up causing positive change for all Hoosiers. And my hat's off to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Other responses? Representative Avery.
We pass actual legislation that provides a demonstration project for early childhood education already, and I think there's some communities in Indiana that are doing early childhood education, but this was sponsored by Representative John Day. I'm not sure who the Senate sponsor is, or Benita. I thought it might be. That's why I looked that way. But there is a bill that passed the House, and I don't know if it's going to receive consideration in the Senate or not, because the Senate tends to work its own will on legislation, but it has passed the House, and it creates a pilot project for early childhood education in Indiana, and Benita, I'm sure, has more light to shed on its chances of passage.
Senator Becker.
Thank you, Rose, for being here and for all the work that all of you are doing locally, that the community is doing locally in this area. And we did pass the resolution, and I think one of the reasons why we felt this was important was so that we could get actual information research done at the state level by legislators and legislative services so that we could better document the necessary information. But Representative Day has passed a bill. We're still trying. We don't know yet whether or not we'll get a hearing because of the fiscal impact on the bill in this budget being what it is in the state right now. But either way, we're going to continue to work on it so that we can bring it forth in a positive way. And just for, I just want to let folks know that there is some information on the back table. There's one tool that I made up. If you want to track a specific bill or piece of legislation, if you want to watch committee hearings on the internet, you can do so. You can see the legislator websites. There's lots of information, and just wanted to provide a tool with that, as well as one regarding unemployment compensation, property taxes. There's also, I made some copies regarding what people can do whose utilities are in the process. We were able to get Vectren to delay a week as far as shutting off with the moratorium, but this is a handout that shows you what you can do to try to keep your energy on, and you can set up a payment plan with them. And there's toll-free numbers, information, as well as just a general update on some of the issues that I've been working on, and on the Senate's plan for unemployment compensation, which is probably a little, the House wasn't able to pass anything, and I suspect we'll pass something, but it'll just be a work in progress until we get to conference committee.
Thank you. I did forget something right before we move on to the next issue, and that is the last session of the Meet the Legislators. Representative Crouch was not able to be here because she was feeling really, really sick. And I think at the time I mentioned that I wish she got better, and apparently that worked because she's here today. And so we're glad that she's feeling better, and hope stays that way. That's good. The other thing I want to mention was that Representative Van Haften and Senator Dyke are not here today because there is another Meet Your Legislators type event in Mount Vernon, and a lot of their district is also, or representing also, the Mount Vernon and or Posey County area. So feel free to give either one of those or both of those folks a call and tell them where they should have been and what they missed. So you're welcome to do that. With that, we're going to move to this side of the room. See you on the far back over there. Please, microphone is on its way. Please state your name and very briefly your issue, and then you can get into your issue.
Fred Cook, and I have a bill. I have 1,500 signatures here of registered voters from Evansville and Newburgh.
But the issue first.
The Regulatory Commission.
Okay.
We propose that the Regulatory Commission be elected instead of appointed because it seems like this is where the problem lies with the rate increases with veterans. And we plan on sending this bill, these petitions to the governor and to the CNN network to, where they can compare our rates here to rates around the country.
Thank you. Responses from legislators. Representative Avery.
Thank you for being here, Fred. I think I commented on this a few weeks ago when you brought this subject matter up too. Years ago, I always opposed an elected regulatory commission, and I'm not 100% sure where I'm at today. But the reason I did is because the people that can afford to elect to contribute to a regulatory commissioner would be the big utilities and the big corporate community that often control elections. And so I would really have my reservations about that because I'm afraid that special interests would probably control the people elected. However, I'm not sure it really matters a whole hell of a lot because in recent years, we find the utility industry largely controlling the decisions that are made or having a tremendous impact, shall we say, on the decisions that are made by the Utility Regulatory Commission. And I don't think that it's been, the people's voice has not been heard. And so maybe an elected commission, it can't hurt because it can't get much worse than it is right now, I think. But it seems like it's just not a recent occurrence. That's been the case for many, many years under various governors. I just found out last week that Senator Serber, who served on the commission, is moving on to the probation. He's getting another appointment to the probation agency or whatever it's called, the parole office, and for the state of Indiana under the Department of Corrections. And so I hate that we're losing Greg, but nevertheless he is moving on and he'll be replaced, I understand. And I'm not sure who's replacing him, but I do think that I have my reservations about it, and I'll keep an open mind. But as I said, I'm a lot closer to supporting the elected system than I was at one time.
Thank you. Actually, Senator Becker was next, then Representative Rican.
I was just going to say I share the same, I guess really I would agree with Dennis. I have real reservations about an elected utility board because I'm really afraid that big money would control who gets in as an elected body. And really and truly when they're deciding rate cases, it should be nonpartisan. and they should just look at the facts. And Representative Crouch and I did meet with a veteran representative a couple weeks ago just to sit down with them to go over why their rates are so much higher and why the increases have gone up so much quicker than other utilities over the last 5 and even 10 years. If you look at the IURC puts out a website. They have a website, and they actually publish utility rates from all the utilities across the state. One of the things that someone with the IURC told me is that because Sigico, when they were Sigico instead of Vectren, they used to have the lowest rates in the state, and they don't anymore. And they felt like it was probably just a difference in the management of, So, so we're still trying to get to the bottom of it. I guess what they were saying in a roundabout way was that they felt like Sigico was much better managed, which may be why their rates were lower. So I don't know if that's the case or not, because actually Vectren was in Indianapolis and worked in had contracts, and their company was from another part of Indiana too. So anyway, we'll see what we find out. But I would share the concerns expressed by Representative Avery. I'm not sure that we'd get any better just with an elected IURC.
Thank you. Representative Rican.
I'm learning a lot about the legislature as we go along and trying to be as active as I can. And one of the things that interests me are these summer study committees. And it seems to me that this is maybe an appropriate topic to really look at alternatives of how you really run, how that particular commission could be run, and elected versus appointed. And there might even be something in between, but certainly it isn't working now. I don't think the people are being heard, and it is really, really destructive to see what has happened to people in their homes. So we need to do something different.
Thank you. We'll move on to another issue now. We're on this side of the room. See down here in the front. Microphone, yes. Microphone is on its way. Please state your name and very briefly your issue, and then you can get into your issue.
I'm Kim Sherman, and I'm here about toxic air in our schools. I've previously written to you about the study by Johns Hopkins and University of Massachusetts and USA Today that ranked our schools as having the most toxic air in the country due to industrial pollution. Your response to my letter was that you asked IDEM to do more monitoring of school air. When I contacted IDEM, they informed me they test for 62 pollutants, none of which are the toxins and carcinogens listed in the study as affecting our schools, which makes IDEM's testing irrelevant. Second, you sent me a copy of Bill 440, which addresses air in the schools for things like dust. While I'm sure you want to keep an eye on dust, I don't understand why you aren't concerned with carcinogens, which have already been shown to be a problem. I realize you don't want to ask industry to curb the carcinogens they release. Representative Hoy has said in this meeting before that trying to pass environmental legislation in Indiana is akin to walking on water. And you've recently taken steps to own your own coal plant. However, it seems that on a moral basis, you should care that our children breathe more carcinogens and toxins at school than 98% of kids in the country. Why can't you look at the stimulus for school buildings and give us sophisticated air filters, or even ask industry to chip in since they have created this danger to our kids? Why can't you ask the EPA to perform true air tests? Some schools that ranked better than ours have been shut down due to this study and follow-up monitoring, while you have done essentially nothing. I'm tired of my 3 children going to school every day and being at greater risk of getting cancer because you have done nothing.
Thank you. Responses from legislators. Representative Avery, then Representative Crouch.
Several years ago, and I've been sitting here trying to think of the name of this organization, it finally came to my mind. It was an organization called Improving Kids' Environment. I believe that's the case. John Blair probably knows. Is that the correct name?
Yes, it is. Oh,
and you would know too, Jim. I carried legislation for them on this very subject matter, and the Department of Education was in the process of monitoring the environment in the schools, and they were things like, one of the biggest problems is chemical use in the schools, janitors that use chemicals that many children are allergic to and cause adverse reactions. And they assured me that within a short period of time that those type of harsh chemicals would be out of the schools. And then a couple years later, another legislator, I can't recall who it was, it might have been Matt Pierce, so another legislator introduced similar legislation. At that point, well, neither one of our bills moved, by the way, but at that point, they had reached a point where most schools were in compliance with that standard. And I have not really heard complaints since that time from people indicating that those standards are that the schools were still had hazardous air, except what all of us have to breathe, which is at times hazardous. But the schools are not unique to what many other, all of us have to breathe. But if that's not accurate, well, I'd appreciate someone perhaps letting me know. But because we have done things and we have made steps to make sure that these harsh chemicals that are used for example, spraying for insects or spraying for cleaning the household chemicals that are used in the schools. But you're saying the schools are more polluted than the air that we breathe?
Well, the study specifically targeted schools and looked at 127,000 schools in the country and ranked them.
Uh-huh.
And we were in the top 2% for the worst. Now, if I have to send my kids to school every day, I would like to know that they have clean air to breathe.
I would like to know.
There are things that you
Sure.
can do to address the air while they are in school.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, filters.
Well, I think all of us every year we introduce legislation, many of us do at least, to try to do those things.
Well, I would rather industry clean up the pollution, but obviously that's not going to happen.
But are you saying it's the pollution in our environment in general that's causing, or is it something unique to the schools? Because you're asking about the schools, and that's why I'm saying
That's because the study targeted the schools.
Okay. So,
Okay.
So I would like for the schools to be addressed.
Okay.
separate from industry or separate from the overall environment?
Well, if you would like to address pollution with industry, that's fine. But I have a feeling by the time that happens, my kids are going to be in college.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to do today?
Okay. Next legislator is Representative Crouch, then Representative Rican.
Yes, and thank you for being here, Kim. And we did communicate, and Senator Becker and I sent a letter to IDEM requesting them to do additional monitoring. I have not heard back from them, so if they're telling you it's not going to do any good, that's not what I have heard. I haven't heard anything. I'll follow up. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Rican.
Ms. Sherman, if you'd give me your contact information, I am pretty sure there is a bill that may have gone past the House but did not go into, I don't think it's gotten any further. That means we could possibly do something with it, but it was either Representative Vandenberg or John Barnes, and it was on air quality in schools. And I think, however, most of the thrust was on mold. But if you'll get me your information, I'll follow up and get back to you.
Thank you. Next is Senator Becker.
As Representative Crouch said, we did not ignore you, Kim. We did everything we possibly could. We're still waiting to hear back from IDEM. One of the things that they responded was that in the USA Today study, USA Today refused to give the criteria that they used to come to the conclusions that they've came to. And well, they have not responded to the state exactly. Well, I'm just saying what the IDEM indicated. So yeah, that would be helpful to know how they actually did. But we're trying, and there was a bill. Senator Guards passed a couple bills dealing with air quality, and I think if we can get those to become law, it will help in this area as well.
Thank you. We'll move on to
Could I
the...
just make one? I don't recall getting your. Sounds like everyone else received your report. Would you send me one too? Thank you.
One too, please.
Okay. We're moving on to the next issue. We're back on this side of the room. We're going to be down in front this time. Lady in the third row. Yes, you. You tried it before. You're successful this time. Please state your name and your issue real quick, and then you can get into your issue.
My name is Estella Moss, and I'm a senior. And my concern is the tax cap that just passed through the legislature. When I received the notice that this was going to occur, and the deadline, the deadline was, I think, December the 31st. So I called the auditor's office and to see what I needed to bring. So I was told that if anyone was on the deed beside you and your spouse, that you did not qualify. So I called 3 legislators before the bill went in, while they were acting, before they acted, and they were going to check on it, but I don't know where it stands. But what I have a daughter on there as rights to survivorship, so I was told I was disqualified, that anyone had that on there, anybody on there. And I guess we are familiar with what rights to survivorship means. That means after you are dead, then, but at this time, I'm the taxpayer. So, but I won't be, and many others. I think this is going to affect a whole lot of seniors because most of us probably have someone. And once you are dead, then the your name comes off and it goes to the next person. So I don't see why we should be penalized because we have that rights to survivorship or tenants in common. They are not paying the taxes. I am. And once I'm dead, it's going to roll over to the next person. So I just, I haven't heard from any of the 3 legislators that I spoke to.
You didn't talk to me.
Okay.
I'm seeing that now.
There
I
you
wish
go.
I had.
Okay, we got a chance right now. Responses from the legislator. First will be Senator Becker.
Estelle, one thing I wanted to get clarification before I answered your question, was this for the special exemption for seniors that we passed this past year?
Yeah, the cap.
You know, I came across that same issue, and so I talked to our Senate fiscal analysts, and I also had them do research because I had a constituent who did it wasn't you, but I did have one that contacted me a few weeks ago, and so I also talked to our auditor's office, and that's what they initially indicated to me was the case. I think if you go back now, you'll find that you should be fine, you should qualify for that exemption.
But the deadline's over.
Well, but you can do it for next year, even if you can't do it for this year. And actually, I don't think the deadline was December 31st. I think it was March the 1st for this year. But I would encourage you, because I did ask, and they did research on that, and it really doesn't matter as long as you are on that deed and paying the taxes, which you are. You should be eligible for that deduction.
Yes, because I even called one of the legislature's office, and they didn't know anything. So
I did look into it because I had a request from another senior citizen on the very same issue.
Okay. Other legislators, I think Representative.
No.
Okay. Representative Avery.
That's all right, but I'd be happy to look into it too. It sounds like she's going to do it. I wasn't aware of that issue, but that's pretty serious.
Okay. Representative Avery.
I was just going to say the cap itself wouldn't affect your property because you have someone else as a right of survivorship for tenant in common. The cap itself applies to which has gone in effect, I think, at 1.5%, 2%, 2.5%, and 3.5% right now, and we'll go to 1, 2, and 3. But that wouldn't apply. But it's as Vanita said, it was the special exemption for seniors that you're talking about, and I think you mentioned it to me. I'm one of the 3 probably you mentioned it to at a function, and I
called you.
Oh, did you? Okay. And I was mentioned that I would talk to the person that had the information, and I've not talked to him yet. I probably should. I believe that was Senator Dyke that you had spoken to about it in great detail, but I'm hopeful that everything is okay. But if it's not, I'll certainly talk to Senator Dyke in a more timely manner now. But thank you very much for being here.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next issue, and it's going to be on this side of the room. Let's go all the way to the back. Almost all the way to the back. I see a hand up back there, and you're the only one. The microphone is on its way to you. Please state your name and very briefly your issue, and then you can get into your issue.
Hi, my name is David Griffith, and I am talking about the issue of Evansville's distance to Chicago, the connection to Chicago, a tourism issue. And basically, driving to Chicago from here, the question is how far it is. At Terre Haute, the signs say 175 miles from Terre Haute to Chicago. We're left here with a gray area. Some people say 300 miles. I would argue it's less than that. A lot of folks, what they'll do, they'll drive to Mount Vernon, Illinois to stay on the interstate, and they'll drive 349 miles from here to reach Chicago by using Interstate 64 and 57. We have Lakeshore Drive right here in Evansville called US 41, and there are no signs that say Chicago is 200, it has to be 275 miles because it's 175 miles between Terre Haute and Chicago. So we could do better to serve tourism and become a more visitor-friendly community by letting people know here that you can reach Chicago. What is really ironic is in Indianapolis, the signs say Chicago I-65 North, and I-65 does not cross Illinois. It stops at Gary. But they promote I-65 as an Indianapolis-Chicago connector. Can we post a sign here in Evansville at Lynch Road for 41 North that says Chicago is 275 miles? I think that would allow and inform the traveler to question whether or not, do I want to drive that distance, the straight shot to Chicago on 41, or do I want to add 74 miles to that drive by going to Mount Vernon, Illinois? We're just asking for a sign. Is that possible?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to kibitz real quick because I think what we really need is a sign outside of Chicago saying how far Evansville is. That's what I think. I couldn't help myself. I apologize for that. Representative Avery was first, then Representative Rican.
Thank you. Did you talk to me last year? I thought you did. And I wrote a letter last year to the Department of Transportation on that very subject matter. And I don't recall getting a response, but there's some departments that really just don't respond to letters. And that's one of them. But we criticize FSSA a lot for the job they do, which is really awful. But they are really good at responding to my mail, which I appreciate. But so they do something right, and I shouldn't criticize them for everything. But the Department of Transportation, I don't think ever responded to me on that one. But I do recall your contacting me, and I do recall writing a letter. And I think I even sent you a copy of it. But if not, I'll make sure I'll do it again, and we'll see if we. And what we might want to do is we'll all have a joint letter, which we've done a lot lately. I'll prepare a joint letter. Maybe I can plagiarize from the one I did before. But we'll do a joint letter, and that might help get a response. And I'm sure all the legislators would be happy to sign that. I'm not sure it needs to be on Lynch Road, but an appropriate place in Vanderburgh County indicating the distance to Chicago, I think would be a good idea.
Thank you. Representative Rican was next.
I would just add to the comment that Jim, I don't see Mary Lee. If she's in here in the there she is. Mary Lee will remember the conversations about the snowbirds from Chicago that come down here to play on our golf courses. So we need them to come here.
One more thing. The Illinois map shows the distance from Evansville to Chicago. And 41 South, when you're driving 41 South, you know how far Evansville is, 200 miles north of Evansville. They have signs posted to Evansville. So being as large as Evansville is, we have to take the leadership and initiative for Southwest Indiana on that. Vincennes may not do it, but Terre Haute is the selling point. We're allowing Terre Haute to tell us how far it is to Chicago, and we should do that here in Evansville.
Okay, Senator Becker was next.
Well, I was just going to say, certainly I think the delegation would be happy to sign a joint letter to NDOT asking them if there's any way humanly possible. This seems like a reasonable request.